Hello and welcome to Ham Nation, episode 541, March 1st, 2023. And a hearty hello to everybody. Thanks for clicking on the Ham Nation live here on the Ham Radio Crash Course. Packed show. Five different guests? Think about that.
We
Five
have a
different
ton.
guests. That's right. Packed show. Let's go quickly to the host so we can get through it in one piece today, and we'll hear all about it. Host and guests. I see a guest off the shoulder of Gordo there. Gordo, what are you up to tonight with your friend? That's Chip. I notice you got a chip on your shoulder, Gordo.
I think I do. Gordo here, WB6NOA, and
Chip Margelli, K7JA, coming to you from California, where it's snowing at In-N-Out.
so guess what we're
crazy.
going to talk about, and that is Winter Field Day.
I got a call from my sister, who is an engineer on the locomotive at Disneyland, and they got snow at Disneyland. Crazy.
That's
Man.
nuts.
Don, how are you, sir?
It's 85 degrees down here, which is crazy as well. I'm great. I'm wearing my Irish hat because, well, it's March, and March is St. Patrick's Day. And St. Patrick's Day is the day that I first met my wife back in 1984. We were married 6 months later, but that's really not why you called. Another nice thing about March is it's the opening of the Young Ham of the Year 2023 nominations. You can find this form on the Newsline website, arnewsline.org. Our late great friend, yours and mine's and Chip's and Gordo's and everybody else's, Bill Pasternak, started that. WA6ITF, it's now named in his honor. The WA6ITF Amateur Radio Newsline Young Ham of the Year. If you know of a deserving young radio amateur, there's your nomination form, arnewsline.org. We've got Dr. T with the solar update coming up, as well as a nice report from the aforementioned Newsline. And back to you, Joshua.
All right, thank you very much. I am coming off of a cold, so I apologize for any coughs and obviously me playing around with Kleenexes. So I'll just throw it right to Amanda. We are watching the chat for any questions that come up. Make sure you just question in your comment or at Ham Radio Crash Course or at Amanda, and that's how you can get on the air if you have a question.
Well, thank you, Josh. I appreciate you. He's got a lot to handle tonight, everyone. You go easy on him. I'll tell you what. All right. Well, let's get right to it. Our first guest tonight is Rich, WQ3Q, and he's here to talk about the PanCam, right? Rich, I'm not going to take too much of your time, so I just want you to tell us, what are you doing it and why are you doing it?
Okay. Yeah, PanCam. It's we're setting up a special event to run across the country this year. Hams for PanCam is the name of it, and it's basically something that started last year with my group at the Skyview Radio Society, just a little bit away from Pittsburgh here. And it started up because I do have pancreatic cancer. And
We're sorry to hear that.
Thank you. I'm okay. I'm actually okay. Anyhow, the thing was that I've been using PanCam for information on diets and everything else. And they said, well, we're having a walkathon in Pittsburgh. Would you like to, gather some people up so you could raise some money for us? And I said, yeah, I'm not that kind of guy. But I says, I do have a lot of friends. And those friends happen to be the Skyview Radio Society guys and anybody that's on the air that will hear us. So I says, I'm going to try something crazy. And I says, I'm going to set up a special event. And I'm going to call out CQ and see who answers and see what happens. So that happened April last year. And we ended up contacting 750 plus other ham radio operators. And through their efforts and efforts otherwise, they passed on the word. And through that, just from our simple little effort, we raised about $5,500 for.
Wow.
Wow.
And so I said, you know what, this is cool. Let's look at this further. So this year I decided to go crazy and say, well, let's do this across the country. And, fools rush in when wiser people know better. And so we're going to set up, we already have 2 1-by-1 call size, N3P and N4P. We're going to try and get all the others in there based on the ARRL section numbers. And what I need is help on that. I need hams to contact me that would be willing to help do that. I can take as many as possible and would love to do that so that we can expand this and have a bigger success.
Now, listen, everybody, he wants top ops, okay? He wants big gun stations. He wants you to be able to make a lot of contacts and help them out and get as much information about this out as possible. So if you think you're one of those stations, you should be contacting Rich. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. And the nice thing about this one, it was sort of unexpected, was that as our team were making contacts, it wasn't like a normal contest or anything else. It wasn't like a real quick contact. People wanted to share their individual stories with us. Mm-hmm. And so our group said, just listen, there's people that need to tell their story, or people need to have information on where to go for further information. Because we're doing a public service here by offering information and getting the word out about PanCan, and specifically in a way that helps patients as well as helps them find research studies to go to. And so that was the general idea. So when we set up these special events across the country, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to make contacts. We'll put out CQs, but we're going to be listening to people as they contact us.
Awesome.
We're here to kind of just sort of spread the word, but also to listen and give people a chance to tell their story.
And do you have a commemorative QSL card for everyone to gain?
Yeah, you showed one we used last year.
Okay.
That was the one that had all the pictures on it. That's the one we used last year. We're also setting up a certificate. We're thinking that if we can aggregate all of the Cabrillo files from across the country, we can set up a certificate for contacting all of them. And so it'd be a clean sweep kind of certificate.
Oh, great. That sounds like a lot of fun and a challenge for everybody to also get out there and work you. Anything else you want us to know about the special event and what you're doing?
Just that, it's really a lot of fun. Like I said, all the guys up at Skyview that worked with us on this, they all enjoyed the fact that they were able to hear these stories and talk a little bit about my story, but that's insignificant. The other thing, I guess the last thing to think about is the fact that across the country, there are 30 cities that are having a walkathon. And so I'd like to find ham radio operators that are near those 30 cities. And so if you contact me at my email, which is rybar1949 at nbnancyboyd.net. So rybar1949 at nb.net. I can tell them what cities are involved. I can tell them what I would like to have, because I need captains in each one of those sections to sort of oversee it and to aggregate. And also I need operators within this. I mean, those sections are large. Just like in Florida, I've got 3 guys working Florida, or 3 guys working N4P. One in Florida, one in Atlanta, and one in Virginia. And they're working together. And what will happen is when somebody makes that contact, again, they'll be given a link to go to get the QSL and the certificate. But on that page on PanCan will also be a brief biography for anybody who has any of the hams that have ever had pancreatic cancer or experiences with them. And unfortunately for N4P, they have 2 gentlemen, highly successful people who have passed away because of PanCan, or because of pancreatic cancer.
Oh, that's terrible.
So that's that. And, it's just one of those things. there's no sense in sitting worrying about it. You got to get up and do something about it. And so I hope people will join me and help us make this a success across the country. But again, get in touch with me on the by email. I can talk with them on the phone. We can get up a Skype or not a Skype, a Zoom, whatever.
Okay. Well, you guys heard it here first. Audience, please help Rich out, and let's work for helping out pancreatic cancer. So thank you, Rich, for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it. And I sign up for at least 1 hour. I'm going to work at least 1 hour, maybe 2, if I can find the time. So hopefully everyone else will do the same. Yeah, it's kind of like a pledge. Maybe we should get some sponsors to go along with it. Anyhow, we'll talk about that later.
Okay.
All right. You have a great night. Stick around. And now we're going to go over to Gordo. Gordo, with the chip on his shoulder. Take it away, Gordo.
Yes, indeed. Well, we've had some real winter weather, but tonight we're going to talk about Winter Field Day. So here's Chip, K7 Juliet Alpha.
Well, good evening, everybody. And yeah, bring up that first one there. It's great to see everybody here on the chat and everything. Yes, this past year, since I started my retirement life, the first thing that happened was I got selected Shanghai to be the president of the Orange County Amateur Radio Club here in Southern California, our call sign W6ZE. And for some number of years now, we've done Winter Field Day, and every year it seems to be a bigger enterprise. And true enough, we have green snow out here. We are not shoveling any white stuff, and we don't have those kinds of challenges. And yes, we do put on a big operation, but to me, it reflects the nature of the adversities that we could run up against. Not just the matter of, say, an earthquake, which everybody is looking for, but also the arc storm, which is something that has happened before, which is the atmospheric river hanging around for weeks and months, and that could just wipe out infrastructure all over the place. So at W6ZE, we do run a pretty big operation. This is the 15 and 20 and 10 meter CW mast. It's a U.S. Tower 31-foot mast with a drive-on mount for it. So we just drove the car on there, and that held it in place very well. And we use a Force 12 C3 tri-bander there, and that was our CW station. Now here we have a view on the right. That's the C3, and on the left there's a flagpole there, and we were able to get a rope up there and pulled up a 2-element, for field day, a 2-element, full-sized 40-meter Yagi.
Wow.
And this is consists of a couple of fiberglass fishing poles, butt to butt for each element, with wire taped to it. And there on the tips, the ends of the wires go out at sort of an inverted V style, but it keeps the high current portion of the antenna basically flat, so you don't lose height. And it was a very effective antenna. This is for our 40 phone station. They saw our 2 elements and they raised us one. This is a 3-element inverted V Yagi that was designed by our one of our board members, Ron W6WG. And you can't really tell, but those are just the supports, and there are an inverted V elements coming off of the tips of each of those. And that beam worked very, very well, situated above the green snow there. There's another view of the C3. We had some sunshine on our Winter Field Day. We had some rain. We had some clouds. We had a little bit of everything. But you know, if the bad things are going to happen, like an earthquake, they're not going to happen on a sunny day. And so we are ready for just about anything at W6ZE. There was a second C3 on a crank-up mast, also designed by W6WG, and that was used for our phone stations. Now these 2 tri-bander 20, 15, and 10 meter antennas go down to triplexers. This is the one of the 2 that we use. This was made by Low Band Systems. The triplexer unit itself is on the left. That's a 500 watt unit, and then the bandpass filters on the right side are 200 watt units, and the port to port isolation on these is anywhere between 105 and 120 dB. And so unless you are right on the second harmonic, say of 20 meters onto 10 meters, you do not know that the other station is there, even though it's using the same coax, the same antenna. It's really quite amazing to me how well that works. As our generator system, to avoid interruption, we use propane, and we use 2 propane tanks. So there is seamless switchover when one tank goes low. It just switches over to the other one, and we don't have to knock off to change out gasoline or anything like that. So it's a very efficient operation. We get a rental tent that we house most of the stations in. This is the phone tent. We had a separate CW tent, and we huddle down in there. It's probably about 55 degrees inside the tent at night, which is certainly a lot warmer than for a lot of the winter field day people. But for us Californians, it feels plenty chilly, that's for sure. Here's our 15 and our 10 meter stations doing a land office business. We had very, very good results on the higher bands, thanks to Dr. T and her increased sunspot activity. It was very, very nice. We do very efficient stations. Little Kenwood 590 there, and a miniature tower. And we have a very clean layout because, as you know, after about the first 2 hours of field day, there are chocolate chip cookies and Cheez-Its and coffee cups and Mountain Dew all over the place. So at the start of field day, it has to be clean, and then it kind of deteriorates from there. Well, there I am shivering at night, and actually it was pretty warm with as many layers as I had on, but I'm there on 40 meter CW, and we were doing a pretty good business there with that 2-element full-sized Yagi. Now, any operation like this is only as good as the teamwork of the club, and we did not have a huge number of people out there, a couple of dozen, but everybody worked very well together. The total setup and teardown time was less than 8 hours combined, and we were down from the end of the contest to being able to drive off the site in an hour and a half. Wow. So this is a well-oiled machine, and just everybody in the club has a role. They figure it out. They cooperate. They look aside left and right, say who needs help, and they get the help. And it is a pleasure to work with such a great group of folks that know what has to get done. And then when all is said and done, the poor car gets weighed down again with all the masts and the antennas and the red flag, and vow never to do it again, of course, until next year. Yeah, that's Corpus K7JA there afterwards. I'm kind of a mess, but yes, I am in shorts after winter field day, so it's all right. And yeah, you know, they do have a point system. I realize this is an emergency drill, but they do have a point system, and we ended up with a whole lot of contacts there. I think 2,100 on phone and 1,300 and some 1,380 on CW. And thanks to the improved conditions on the high bands particularly, we doubled our score from last year. And that was, to me, just a staggering achievement by this group of radio amateurs. And it looks like we're going to be in a very favorable position atop the leaderboard for the 5th year in a row. So it's great fun and good to see all that. Again, our group is ready for major disasters. We can cover everything from NVIS communications to the state capitol to the East Coast or the Midwest, wherever the emergency centers are. And that's what our interest in winter field day, both as training for when weather is bad and also as a warm-up for ARRL June field day, where most everybody will be on raising a ruckus, W6ZE among them. So that's a brief story of Southern California's version of winter field day. We had a great time, and I'm sure we worked quite a few of you.
All right. Well, thanks, Chip Hassan, and a great job that your entire team has done for Orange County Amateur Radio Club. All right. I'll either turn it over to Amanda or over to ICOM America.
I'm going to take a couple questions and some comments here.
Sure.
First of all, everyone is saying, great work, Chip. Your club is outstanding. Good job. Fantastic work. And I like that hour and a half teardown. I don't know.
Yeah.
Did you say how long it took to put it all up?
Well, it was, we started, what's it start at? 11 o'clock, I believe, is the start time for setup. And we were sitting around in a circle drinking coffee at 4:30 in the afternoon.
All right.
Yeah,
So-
and you know, we could have been doing that an hour earlier. We're very good at what we do.
It sounds like you're very efficient. Everyone has their job. And then the next thing I'm just going to address, because I'm going to forget it later on in the show, is what is phone? Phone operations, by the way, is just another way of saying voice operations. So it's just a way that we call it, and that it is what it is. There's CW, there's digital, and there's phone or voice.
Yes, and
Either one you want to say.
Right, and we find that the voice contacts, you know, go very quickly. With our operators, the CW contacts go quickly, but they fish out a little faster. There seems to be a lot of phone activity in this, but the CW is growing every year. Digital is painfully slow. You know, and
It really can be.
It can be, and I realize that a lot of the individuals go out and they want to make 5 or 10 contacts, and if they've got a piece of macaroni strung into a tree, that digital contact like on RTTY or PSK31 is about all it can do. But for the most part, we're doing single sideband and Morse code on CW with some FM on VHF and UHF.
Okay. And one other thing, I think somebody had asked, and I missed who it was. So what was your portable power? What were you using to power?
Oh, we're 100 watts. It was 100 watts. They changed the scoring this year. Previously, you could get 2 points if you were 100 watts or less, and then it was 1 point. I'm trying to remember what the point system was, but this year 100 watt contacts were worth 1 point. Last year, 100 watt contacts were worth 2 points. So we made twice as many contacts and basically had the same point number as last year. If you normalize that to the same to the same point structure,
Sure.
we doubled our score.
Well, and the only other thing, my only comment is you could have at least wore Uggs to make us feel like you were struggling. Okay, and I have just another comment about Winter Field Day. I talked to one of the coordinators tonight, Marvin. Hi, Marvin, if you're in the chat room. And he was really excited they are just now finishing crunching numbers. And in fact, I think they just had some deadlines this weekend.
Yes.
So we look forward to having them on the show in the next month or so. And they're going to be talking about how many participated, how many QSOs were made, how many logs were uploaded. You pay attention to it. You're going to find out a lot of things. And hopefully we'll get the exclusive on it. And you'll hear it here first. So,
Well, that's great. And, you know, just like the summer field day, winter field day is different things to different people. To our club, it's not only an emergency exercise, but it's an opportunity to do something that you can't do at home. It's an opportunity to be louder than you are at home.
an event in the middle of winter. I mean, in January, most people don't have any events that take place, so there's nothing to do. So this is a reason to get out and get on the air. So thank you, Chip, for sharing with us. We really appreciate it. And with that, I think we're going to send it over to ICOM.
Got cabin fever? Look no further. Spring is just around the corner, and ICOM has what you're looking for. Our top quality base stations, mobiles, and handhelds are perfect for working your favorite bands inside the ham shack or venturing out this spring. ICOM's newest FM transceiver is the ICV3500, and it's ready to hit the road whenever you are. With a compact body and simple interface, this radio is a must for those looking for a long-range mobile with a fresh look. Go further with 65 watts output and get louder with 4.5 watts of audio with the ICV3500. The rugged ICOM IC T10 portable meets or exceeds standard military testing. With an IP67 waterproof rating, the IC-T10 can withstand any field activities ahead. Hear any transmission and listen to FM broadcast with a loud 1500 milliwatt speaker. The IC-T10 is an excellent choice for any bug-out bag. The IC7300 is a high-performance, innovative HF transceiver with a compact design that will far exceed your expectations. This innovative HF transceiver digitizes RF before various stages, reducing inherent noise in different IF stages. With RF direct sampling, the IC7300 changes the way entry-level HF is designed. The IC705 is a perfect sidekick and QRP companion. Base station features and functionalities at the tips of your fingers in a portable package covering HF, 6 meters, 2 meters, and 70 centimeters. This compact rig weighs just under 2 pounds with RF direct sampling for most of the HF band and IF sampling for frequencies above 25 megahertz. The perfect accessory for the IC705 is the optional backpack LC192 with a special compartment for your IC705 and room for accessories. The ID52A is a VHF-UHF dual bander with D-Star and FM dual mode functions and is the first handheld amateur radio with a full-color 2.3-inch waterfall display. This radio supports conventional FM communications and D-Star simplex, repeater, regional, and worldwide calls over the D-Star Internet Gateway. Send photos over D-Star with a connected Android device. The ID52A is a perfect companion to the IC705. Both use compatible batteries and headsets, and you can also use the same Android app for D-Star operation. Learn more about these and all the great ICOM radios at icomamerica.com/amateur. For the love of ham radio.
Hey, and a big thank you to ICOM for sponsoring us here at Ham Nation. Who's excited for the IC905? I know I'm excited to get my hands on that. So that's a big one we saw at Hamcation, which was a lot of fun. Thanks, everybody, for coming up and saying hi. I will definitely be at Hamvention as well. But, again, we're giving away a swag pack. Every time we go live, we give away 3 swag packs, actually, to 3 lucky winners. And last episode's winners, boy, I'm all over the place. I'm tongue-tied. It's because of all my coughing. Nick Rodriguez, you won a swag pack. Keith Glazer, WUZ373, you won. And Stacy Scarborough, KQ4CJW, you also won. That means you go into the monthly selection for a radio, and this month's winner of a V86 radio is Donnie P. WB5VCO. You won. And last month they gave away a V3500. So every month they're giving away a new radio, and the way you get in on that giveaway is win a swag pack every time we go live. And to do that, go to icomamerica.com/Ham Nation, click the Enter Now button, provide some information, and you will be entered. The link is in the description, and that's pretty much the easiest way to do it. So I get the honor of throwing it back to Amanda, and we're going to hear from Jerry and Amy on their super cool project that they worked on for Quartz Fest.
I'm so excited. It's so great to have Amy and Jerry here. How are you doing?
Wonderful. Thanks for having us.
Of course, anytime. And look at their fantastic shirts. And I do want to say,
we'll hook you up.
Actually, I would like the one from June, if you still have any. I just wanted to mention real quick in the chat, somebody says, first timer here, thanks for getting me interested. Guess what? You're going to get more interested, Eric, because I'm about to talk to some geniuses here. So and these gals are so intuitive. Anyhow, so we're going to talk about what you did while you're at Quartz Fest. Evidently, this was just kind of a side project. You thought this would be fun. So you take it away. You tell me what you did.
Well, Amy, why don't you talk about like what inspired us to do this, like the latest trend out there?
Oh yeah, so a lot of this started because Jerry and I have been talking for quite a number of years about how can you make ham radio a little bit more fun for younger folks to get involved in it. And we've always kind of gone to this idea of gamifying ham radio to some degree to get kids interested. And there's this trend in a lot of these conventions like DEF CON, where they'll make these hacker badges. And, you know, you can get these really cool badges that you can wear, and they do a variety of different things. And so as we were talking about, you know, trying to do something fun for QuartzFest, we were like, well, what kind of hacker badge could we do that would be, you know, ham radio related, would be fun, maybe have a game built in, and started toying with the idea and came up with what essentially is the QuartzFang QRM 2023, which is a hacker badge, but it's also a transceiver.
Yeah, you can just wear it
transceiver.
around, you know, and walk around with your lanyard.
And the purpose is you're just hanging out, walking around. Do you pick up like tags at booths or anything like that?
Well, so as we started to flesh out this project, we started thinking about like, well, how can we build these things inexpensive and put as many features on as possible to, you know, enable this kind of gameplay and make a kind of immediate gratification for folks. And so we started looking around at the components that were available, and one of the concepts was, you know, it should transmit and receive. So we started looking around at like what was available out there, and we found a module that's basically a Baofeng on a little module that costs almost nothing. You can get it, I think it's under $5, can go up to 1 watt of power in VHF band. So like that was an obvious selection for us. So first thing we did is prototyped up just making a VHF handheld.
Okay.
And so it functions as a full handheld. So it's got a push to talk on it. It has a microphone. There's the camp frequency where all the announcements are. So the thing, when it turns on, it should default to the camp frequency. So it has some utility to it.
And I think I tried to zoom in on that. I was trying to see what it was. It's 146.550 or something like that.
Mm-hmm,
Okay.
mm-hmm.
All right.
And so we started working on this just on weekends because we're super busy at work. So that was the only time we had to devote to it. So we incrementally came up with the feature set. So to work with this particular radio module, you need to have a microprocessor, and microprocessors are in short supply these days. And I stumbled onto a new product out there that's pretty interesting, and I think we're going to see a lot of these in ham radio, which is the Raspberry Pi Pico. An entire module with memory and everything is like under $4 for it. So that was the next step. So we got the Raspberry Pi module and hooked it up to the radio, got it working. And then we got to start thinking about like, now what can we add to this for gameplay? And so at first we thought, well, maybe the gameplay will reside on the badge itself, but that's not really teaching much radio etiquette or anything. So we quickly moved towards the idea of, why don't we do a text adventure where you walk around the campsite, and we had sourced these low-cost GPS modules so we could actually measure your location within the campsite and do a text adventure like the old school ones that you played on your old
mud.
Yeah, like a
Oh,
mud
I am
or-
so into this.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Or your games you played on your bulletin board system back in the day. There were
Yes.
chat room versions on the internet. The old Tandy computers had these things, and all the way back to mainframes even.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And so yeah, we started looking around, or I started looking around for like, okay, so now we have the idea of what we want to do. How do we actually make it work on this little tiny processor? And started hunting around and found a bunch of open source software that was very helpful. So there's open source APRS TNCs out there.
Yeah.
And so the next step was to be able to squawk out your location. And so we got that working. And then once all of that was working, we were like, okay, let's just lay out a circuit board and send it off. And here's a funny little story to just talk about the layout.
It's so big.
So big. This thing's giant.
I was wondering.
So So I laid this out on a Saturday, just like in an afternoon, and I'm like, okay, I'll start with the speaker. So I have these little 2-inch speakers, like we'll just use that as the starting point. So the first thing I did is I just entered the speaker in the CAD tool and like, okay, this is going to be the defining factor of the badge. And I got radius and circumference, or diameter, radius and diameter mixed up. So the actual hole that I was working with, I don't think it'll show very well, was massive. But anyway, I just laid out the circuit board around what I thought the speaker size was. And, you know, when you're working in a CAD tool, you don't even really realize what it's going to look like. We got the circuit boards back a week or two later, and we pulled them out of the package, and I'm like, oh my God, they've like scaled up my design. It's totally screwed up. And so then I started looking at the other components. I'm like, oh, hey, all the modules fit. Like, oh. So anyway, it's probably 50%.
I think there was an F-bomb in there when she first said it.
Oh, yeah, multiples. And so anyway, Amy and I soldered these things together. We put together 20 of them. And,
20? Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Our intention was just to hand them out to people at Quartz Fest. So now we're like, I don't know, was it 2 weeks away from Quartz Fest? We didn't have the other side of, we didn't have the game done. So I just jumped onto the computer. Oh, yeah. I jumped onto the computer, and like at work, we use this Unity game engine, which is used for like 3D games. And I'm like, I know it really well. I can just crank this out really fast. So it's kind of ridiculous how we set up the server, which is receiving your APRS packets from the badge itself. So I designed this text adventure framework in just like a few hours or so in Unity. And then I went on ChatGPT, which was just hitting at that point.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes, I already can see where this is going. This is awesome.
And so Amy helped me come up with the theme on it. And so the theme was going to be kind of medieval, old worldy. And so I just asked ChatGPT to start making all of the text for this text adventure. And it worked out beautifully. And so we came up with this gameplay where you wander around, you run into random monsters in the campsite. They move every 10 minutes or so, so you have to chase them down. As you get closer, as you're hunting around, it says, you know, you sense something is 2 squares away, so you have to start hunting like a fox hunt. So that's kind of like, all right, this is teaching some ham radio things. You're fox hunting this. And then you send your location, and you're like, you're 1 square away, or it gets bigger and you're moving away from it. And I had all these monsters that you encounter. And so the monsters sometimes are dropping loot that you pick up. And when you pick up the loot, you can interact with the loot. You can put it into your inventory, or you can try to interact with it directly. Like sometimes you find a potion and you can just drink it immediately. And
all right.
Good things and bad things happen when you interact with them. It's not always good when you drink a random potion that an orc drops on the ground.
Yes,
And then
I know.
and then there's some like really big baddies out there. Where there were 4 dragons or 3 dragons. 3 dragons
Wow.
wandering around, and it takes a lot of hit points to get those. But you can level up by drinking potions and doing that stuff. And keep score between each user. So you're competing against each other. There's a scoreboard, so you can check your score and how you're competing. And in fact, the younger folks in the camp really took to it.
Yeah,
I
there
can
were-
imagine.
Oh yeah.
There was 3 young folks that actually tested and got their technician license at Quartz Fest,
That's right.
and they ended up taking the badges from us and ran around and had fun with them.
Yeah, so the 2 young ladies that got it earlier in the week, they racked up a pretty high score. And so Amy went out with her badge to try to give them a run for their money. And then Jonas, was that his name?
Yeah.
He came in the last couple days.
Yeah, Jonas came in and got his technician license, I think the day or 2 after they
Oh,
did.
fantastic.
And he hadn't got his call sign yet, so we set him up. I think he was with his uncle, but I can't remember his uncle's name, unfortunately. Anyways, they ran around using it under his uncle's call sign until kind of the end of the weekend when Jonas finally got his call sign issued.
cool.
And then we took one of my badges and reworked it with his call sign and then gave it to him as a parting gift.
Oh,
Wow.
You got people
So,
out there
him
speed
and-
running ham radio right now. It sounds like they're already out there for
Yeah,
high
I-
scores.
This young kid stayed up until 3 in the morning the night before to slay the dragon, and
Wow.
they were running all over the camp.
They were like 4 hours nonstop just trying to kill this dragon.
Yeah, it was pretty intense, and he ended it with a score that was like 100 times higher than Amy's.
There was no way anybody could catch up with him at that point.
So yeah, that was it was really great. Just out of simplicity as we were making it. So the way it works, to give a little more detail. So when you push the identify button, it sends an APRS packet out with your GPS location. I have a Kenwood THD74 here receiving the packets. It goes over to a Windows PC, which is running this this Unity project that parses the packets, gets your GPS location, determines which grid you're in and which monsters you might be encountering,
Wow.
keeps track of the score, and stores that away locally. And then it uses text to speech to send the speech back over the radio to the badge so you can hear what's going on. So that was all simplex. And at first, as I was designing it up, I'm like, well, this is kind of a limitation, but it actually turned into something really great, especially with the younger folks getting their license for the first time, having to have proper etiquette working on a simplex channel. So, at first they'd start stomping on people, and then they'd figure out they had to wait. And then also they had to learn, when you're transmitting, you can't be transmitting your location when the computer is sending, the text to speech back to you. You have to wait. And I was pleasantly surprised at how it really teaches a lot about ham radio. So I set the rig up here in my office, and I have it kind of hard-coded, so we'll have an encounter first time I hit the button. But I'll go ahead and hit the button. We'll see what we encounter, and then then we can dial in our response and see what happens.
You see a gladiator ahead of you. They drop their trusty hammer on the ground, its head still smeared with blood, before they disappear into the crowds, leaving the weapon behind. Choice A, add to inventory. Choice B, use item.
All right, so I'm going to choose to use it. So I'm going to use this rotary knob on here to choose selection B, and there's a little screen on there.
There
you go.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. I was wondering how you did this. Okay. So you use the little knob to select choice B. Got it.
So when you choose B, so as you dial through this, you can send your location.
Yeah.
Or choice A or choice B. So I'm going to send B, which I think it said was to try to use it. And we'll see if anything good or bad happens with it.
I6TK. You grab the trusty hammer and test it in the air, feeling its weight and balance. As you swing it, a sense of familiarity and comfort fills you, and you know that this hammer is an extension of yourself. You are ready to face any challenge that comes your way with this trusty weapon by your side. You gain 3 points of dexterity. Dexterity increased to 8.
Oh,
This
this is
Josh
so,
is like,
I'm,
shut up and take my money.
yeah,
Yeah.
this is so
This-
good.
The text was hilarious, all run through ChatGPT. I don't know if Jerry mentioned this, but we also created a healing circle area in the campground. So if you were out battling a monster and your hit points, diminish as you take damage, you have to go to the healing circle to heal yourself up and get your hit points back up. And when you go to the healing circle, you have to answer a ham radio related question in order to successfully get your hit points up. But it's all run through this ChatGPT. So we took regular ham radio related questions and said, make it sound medieval.
Oh, yes.
So they're hilarious.
Yeah, it's like talking about where you shouldn't use a generator, but it's all like, within the realm of a tent or something.
Yeah.
It's like,
This is genius.
So
Yeah.
you're doing like literal collision tracking because
I
you're
know.
physically using the GPS to get them within a space, and then you send the button, so it's tied to the call sign. So the software is kicking back to the call sign instead of spamming everybody. So it's only playing for the person that it's for, right? Oh, this is genius. You guys are amazing. This is
They
awesome.
are they. I feel like I just need to go sit in a corner and eat crayons, right, Don? I mean,
Exactly. I'll split a box with you.
This is
So it's kind of fun, and you have to learn. And I think this is great for ham radio. As you send your location, the state of the game moves over to your state. But if someone comes in and stomps on you, it'll change state to them. So, even in the game mode, you can use the push to talk to say like, hey, give me a second, or come over here, help me fight this dragon together. And those kinds of interactions were happening in this coordination, to battle these virtual monsters and things out there. I think there's a lot of potential in the future to make it more engaging.
I do too.
so true. So wait, now I got a big question. So you're telling me if
that's
multiple
great.
people were in the same location and they squawked at like similar times, the system would know that they were there together and they would like work together?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah. We didn't,
Whoa.
since we only had a couple weekends before
Sure.
Quartz Fest, our game mechanic didn't have much sense of people near each other. But, going forward, you could have an inventory system. So Amy could be in my square and I could be like, Amy is near you, transfer items back and forth, or heal this person because they have, taken some damage.
We got a lot of really interesting suggestions from Jonas. It was great playing with the kids because
I
you
bet.
have a sense of kind of like, what they would like in the game kind of in the future. And so we chatted with him quite a bit, and he had some really great ideas for what we can do, for the badge this next year.
Oh my gosh, we're getting so many questions.
So many.
I know. I've been kind of watching the chat as we've been talking, and I'm like, it's hilarious.
I missed
So
it.
I
Is the
just want to cover
hardware?
a couple things
Oh,
before,
no, go,
because just final features of the device, because we knew once you were away from camp and we took our computer away, we didn't want it to be a brick. So we added a couple kind of useful features. Since we had the GPS there, it was obvious for us to give you UTC time, and then also give you your grid square. So it's constantly displaying your grid square. Plus it also works as a handheld after the fact.
Yep.
So, maybe next year, if things go well, Jonas will come back with his badge and he can continue with revision 2.0 of the text adventure.
Wouldn't that be amazing? I just thought I'm blown away when Gordo said they made a game with ham radio. I was not expecting this.
No.
No.
Oh, that
Thank you.
is great. Maryland WM7 or W7MCJ said she had the best time, and she is a school principal, and she said this is a great way to get more kids involved in ham radio.
I just 100. Where's your medal? Where's your Ham of the Year award? Because
Seriously.
goodness,
This has so much.
gracious.
Think about every ham fest, the kind of applications
Yep.
that this can have.
Mhm.
This is amazing, you guys.
And in fact you could rent the units. Like if you wanted to have fun, you just rent the unit for the weekend at a ham fest.
Now,
And-
Yeah. Hey, Fox Hunt, hold my beer.
right.
Yeah.
We got a
I got your Fox Hunt right here. Yeah.
question
check this
from
out.
Dusty. He
that is
wants
so
to know,
cool.
missed it, is the hardware and software going to be open sourced or some kind of bomb made available or something like that? What are you guys thinking?
Yeah, we'll put it out on the web. I mean, it was thrown together very hastily. So, which is funny. People are like, oh my goodness, the engineering in this. I'm like, oh my God, that
was
was like 4 hours
was
on a
done.
Saturday.
You know what they
It's
say,
embarrassing.
the coolest things that make the largest effect are obviously or more often than not a lot of scratch code in there, right? So
My-
Mhm.
there is so much ingenuity in this. This is so cool.
It's
I'm
just-
so excited.
I was just examining the photos that you sent me, and I was like, oh gosh, they have Raspberry Pi stuff in here. This is way out of hand. Not good out of hand. Are you gonna try to minimize it? Are you gonna try to make it smaller? Or are you gonna keep it
I think you should make it bigger, Jerry. How do you make it? Can you
I
make
don't
it
know.
bigger?
like
I'm
Flavor
torn.
Flav bigger?
Yeah.
Or-
Yeah.
I'm torn. Like Amy's like, oh, you need to relay out the board when we saw it. I'm like, no. You got to be proud of what your
I think you should.
handbag.
No, it's cool.
I think you should put some high vis on there so people can see it.
Yeah.
Another feature is we added a little flashlight on
Of
the
course, you
bottom
have
because
to have
we're
a
running.
flashlight. You have to have a flashlight, of course.
Does it have the safety
Oh.
alarm too?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got
and
the QRM alarm.
it's rechargeable and stuff too. I mean, I leveraged, just stuff you can source off of Amazon and Alibaba and stuff. It costs almost nothing to build this. However, I should point out the GPS modules were totally bootleg, and the quality was terrible. I ended up having to fix a bunch of them, and they didn't they weren't actually what they said they were. It took a little reverse engineering. So
that's probably what took the most amount of time, is just figuring out these kind of fake GPS modules.
Yeah.
Wow. I can't believe you just sat down and like, let's have some fun. 4 hours later, this is what you had. I mean, I know you.
Well, it was a lot more than that. But
yeah. But you came.
All right. Well, Jerry and Amy, thank you. And we're going to have you back because we want to learn more.
We do.
You got it.
Thank you, Gordo, keeping us under control on time.
Yeah. I know. He's getting at it.
Bye, everyone.
We can do a whole show about this.
Yeah, I know. You want to come on the Saturday show and talk about this, ladies?
Sure.
Ooh.
I'll send you his email address. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Where are we going now? Oh goodness, we're going to Don. Him and I are just sitting here eating crayons. How you doing, honey?
I'm great. I'm thinking about this, and especially just the whole youth aspect of this, and it dovetails beautifully with the opening of the nominating period for the 2023 Young Ham of the Year Award. So it is live. This form is live now on arnewsline.org. It's a 90-day nomination window. And so it's time to get your young radio amateur to get them in there, get the nomination in, and let's talk about them and present them at the Huntsville Ham Fest in August when we present that award. So, yeah, we're so excited that the nominating period is open. It's a highlight.
I am too.
It's what we do. It's kind of what Amateur Radio Newsline is built around. Something that Bill Pasternak started back in the 70s. And we're so proud to be able to continue on in his footsteps. And of course, you see his old license plate right there over my shoulder. And the other one, I think that one was the one from the back of the car. The one from the front of his car, because you got to have two in California. That's with our editor, Karen Eve Murray, KD2GUT, who of course carries on in his absence as the editor-in-chief of Amateur Radio Newsline, and a great job that she does too. She had no idea what she was volunteering for. Yeah, I can help. I can help do a little bit of writing. Okay, how would you like to be the editor since Bill died? What? Yeah, okay, we can do that. And so, anyway, some years later, here we are. But let's go ahead and get a little sample of what we do with Amateur Radio Newsline, and something we call, if you're just joining the show tonight, Ham Nation Headlines. Amateur Radio Newsline is about a 20-minute or so audio news program that's been going on, like I said, since the 1970s. And we take three of the top stories and make a little video presentation. And, of course, right after the Ham Nation Headlines, we'll give you the solar news of the week with Dr. Tamitha Skov, another one with big brains. Let's go ahead and get into the news of the week, Josh. From Amateur Radio Newsline Report number 2365, this is Ham Nation Headlines for Wednesday, March 1st, 2023. Our top story takes us to New Zealand, which is trying to recover after Cyclone Gabrielle touched off a national state of emergency. On the North Island, at least 11 people were killed and thousands were reported missing.
Radio operators with Amateur Radio Emergency Communications, or AREC, were put to the test after Cyclone Gabrielle swept through the North Island, bringing floods and damage to infrastructure. AREC volunteer members and other licensed hams had braced themselves in advance of the storm's landfall on Sunday the 12th of February. In Auckland, AREC began providing radio support across the region for field teams and maintained VHF contact with the region's 14 civil defence centres plus local community response groups. Volunteers logged contacts, handled logistics, phone calls, communications and used their PC skills as needed until AREC was stood down at midday on Thursday the 16th of February. Meanwhile, in hard-hit Hawke's Bay, amid rising rivers and power outages, only 3 AREC members were able to respond, each working 12-hour shifts. As Newsline went to production, search and rescue workers were also arriving from Australia. This is Jim Meechan, ZL2BHF.
Hours after a 6.4 magnitude earthquake rocked the already stricken region of Turkey and Syria on Monday, February 20th, mainstream media turned its attention to the critical role that amateur radio was playing there.
With communications taken down in much of the region of Turkey and northern Syria, amateur radio repeaters on VHF and UHF frequencies kept communications open for rescue work and other aid. That dramatic story was told on the BBC programme Digital Planet on Tuesday the 21st of February by Aziz Sasa, TA1E, president of the Turkish Amateur Radio Association. The retired engineer was interviewed by the presenter Gareth Mitchell, an amateur radio operator himself with the call sign M7GJM. Aziz said that following the disaster, VHF and UHF repeaters throughout the region had been the only means of communication for 7 days, as rescuers and agencies shared frequencies and information. He said that the longer distance capabilities of HF were not as essential because most of the issues involved were local and could be handled via VHF shorter range frequencies. Asked what the greatest contribution of the hams has been so far, Aziz said simply, "We helped in saving lives. I believe that's quite a nice thing for us." This is Jeremy Boot, G4NJH.
A call has gone out worldwide for hams to get on the air to bring greater attention to the needs of individuals who have autism.
Amateurs throughout the world whose lives have been touched by autism are going to be getting on the air to help raise awareness of the autism spectrum disorder during World Autism Awareness Week. Between March 25th and April 2nd, operators will be looking to log stations using any mode of their choice with the goal of directing successful contacts to the events page on QRZ.com. This is all about education. Amateurs in the United States will be using the call W2 Alpha. Hams in other countries may want to secure local special event calls, but they will be able to use their home call instead if a special call is not available. All participating hams will be calling CQ Special Event Autism Awareness Week. The organizer, James, KB2FMH, will also be setting up a Discord chat group channel to help operators coordinate their bands and modes to make the most of propagation and traffic. Operators outside the United States should also let James know what call sign they will be using. Hams have already expressed interest from around the world, but more operators are still needed. This is Paul Brown, WD9GCO.
And that's all from the Amateur Radio Newsline, your independent source for amateur radio news for 4 decades and counting at arnewsline.org. With Jim Meechin, ZL2BHF, Jeremy Boot, G4NJH, Paul Brown, WD9GCO, Karen Eve Murray, KD2GUT at the news desk in New York, and our news team across the globe. I'm Don Wilbanks, AE5DW. 7-3. We'll see you next time here on Ham Nation. Now here's the solar update from Dr. Tamitha Skov, WX6SWW.
Space weather this week has been a doozy. We've just come down from a G3 level solar storm that brought aurora as far south as the Swiss Alps, France, and, believe it or not, Death Valley, California. But the fun isn't over. As we take a look at our Earth-facing disk, you can see region 3234 rotating off to the sun's west limb. This is the last big flare player on the Earth-facing disk right now, but we have a little bit more in store, but that's not going to be for a few days yet. But meanwhile, take a look at this big coronal hole. This coronal hole is rotating into the Earth strike zone. It'll get there in about 2 to 3 days, and it'll start sending us some fast solar wind. The last time we saw this coronal hole about a month ago, it sent us some decent fast wind. So aurora photographers, if you missed that G3 level solar storm, don't worry, you will have another chance to catch some more aurora clear down into mid-latitudes. It's not going to be nearly as strong a storm as we just had this past week, but it could give you some more photo ops. Now, as we take a look at stereo A, this is our far-sighted monitor. It's looking at the sun just a tiny bit from the side. You can see this, the big coronal hole that we had in Earth view, that's beginning to rotate to center disk in stereo's view, but look behind it and on the east limb in stereo's view. Do you see all those bright regions? Well, those are big flare players. So even though it's kind of quieted down right now in Earth view, we won't have much of a rest when it comes to those radio blackouts, because in about 4 days, we're going to get these regions rotating back into Earth view again. So definitely, if you're an amateur radio operator, definitely realize you could get more radio blackouts back on the menu. So enjoy this quiet time while it lasts. For more details on this week's space weather, including how that coronal hole and those new flare players might affect you, come check out my channel or see me at spaceweatherwoman.com.
Thank you, Dr. T. Good stuff as always. And speaking of the aurora, some great photos of aurora all over Twitter. Go out and check that out. Follow her as well at Tamitha Skov on Twitter. I knew of at least a couple of airliners, probably more, who are flying up in the aurora zones who actually did 360s in the sky so that all of the passengers on both sides of the plane could get good looks. And I think kudos to the captains of those.
I read
airliners.
about that. That was so
That's very
freaking
cool.
cool.
That's very
That's
cool.
really
There was one article that I came this close to making a snarky comment, but I'm sure it was just clickbait. They said pilot of an airliner does a loop so everyone can see.
Yeah,
no,
that's
not
what they did.
it's not a loop. No,
They did a barrel roll.
No,
A loop is this
roll.
way. Yeah, exactly. Why don't you just do a Lomshavak while you're at it, and the falling leaf or whatever? But you'd have to be a pilot nerd or an airplane.
Of course, as we all.
Oh,
as
that
we
was
all know.
just the coolest thing. Like, if you could tip your pilot, I would tip
Yeah,
him.
I would too.
I
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Just do a little 360 in the air and let everybody see it. Very cool. Anyway, follow her on Twitter at Tamitha Skov. Check her out on her website, spaceweatherwoman.com. She's also, her YouTube channel is Tamitha Skov. So check her out. And much thanks to her and all of the Newsline crew. And speaking of things up in the air, there's been some interest in ham radio balloons of late because of some military action. And let's go over to Gordo and see what we're talking about as far as that goes.
All right. Well, thanks, John. And yes, Tamitha was absolutely correct in prognosticating that we would have another solar storm, and sure enough, we did. Well, at Quartz Fest, Brian and others had a lot of balloons. Well, we had some pretty rough weather, but Brian, how about telling us what we're all thinking about? Is this going to be the end of sending balloons up, and all the schools and all of the amateur radio experiments are told to shut down, or is there a way around it? So here's Brian with Pico balloons. Brian?
Well, thank you, Gordo, and everyone else on the net, and thank you for having me here. Well, we hope not. That'd be the short answer. Why don't I explain? I'm going to do a really brief presentation on what Pico balloon is and some of the different things in amateur radio, and then I'll get back to answering that question.
Roger.
The legalities of it and stuff. So let me just start right here. And
You got it.
You got it?
It's coming in. You got that gray screen again. Try one more time.
This is always a. How about now?
There we go.
Yeah, got
All
it.
right. So we're going to talk a little bit about Pico balloons, but before I can talk about Pico balloons, what I need to do is explain a little bit about the different kind of balloons in amateur radio. So with Pico balloons, we use amateur radio for tracking, gathering meteorological data, and stuff like that. There's also other kinds of balloons in amateur radio use. In particular, there's HAB or near space ballooning, and then there's also the radiosondes, and that's where people repurpose what you would know as a weather balloon. So if we look at what a near space balloon is, or a HAB balloon, that's kind of what a lot of people think about when they think about the school projects. Where they launch a balloon, they generally try to get up to around 100,000 feet, they pop and they come back down. These are large balloons, as you can see here in the picture, and they carry a significant payload. And those have a whole bunch of different aviation rules than our Pico balloons. And there's lots more out on the web if you want to look into what these are, but that's not what I'm going to explain right now. I'm just kind of giving you an overall idea of all the different kinds of stuff involved in amateur radio and balloons. There's also what these radiosondes, and these are your weather balloons that are launched each day. And yes, there are more than 3,000 of them launched every day.
Wow.
For better part of the last 100 years. So 3,000 a day for almost 100 years. That's a lot of these. And there are different aspects of the hobby on these. There's people that chase these transponders down and they repurpose them. And they usually do it on ham radio. And then they relaunch them. So that's a whole nother hobby. So again, these are on large sized balloons. Now, back to Pico balloons. Here's a very typical size Pico balloon. It's something like a balloon like you could get at Walmart or Target, something like that. It's got a little bit of gas in it, and it carries a very small payload because, as you can see, it cannot lift very much. So some general information, Pico balloons are free-floating. They're not tethered. They're considered super pressure. That means that they're sealed. So different than the latex balloons or the large weather balloons you just saw, they don't stretch. They don't expand and then burst like those balloons do. They have a relatively solid envelope that they're in. And once they fill out as they go up in the altitude, they reach a neutral buoyant state. And that's where the weight of the balloon and the payload displace the same weight of air, and then they become neutrally buoyant, and they tend to float along. Our payloads weigh between 3 and 17 grams. The current ones we're flying weigh about 7 grams. And a lot of people have trouble, like, what does 7 grams mean? Well, if you take a U.S. nickel and a U.S. penny and you put them together, that's 7.5 grams. So our entire payload, and when I say the entire payload, I mean the transmitters, the receivers, the antennas, the rigging, the solar panels, the power systems, the computer, everything weighs 7 grams.
Wow.
Yeah, 1 nickel and 1 penny. The flight duration of Pico balloons is in days or weeks. They can circumnavigate the Earth, and they float at between 32,000 and 45,000 feet. Most of the balloons in the last year have been flying between about 42,000 and 45,000 feet as kind of get more. Now, the cool thing about these is they're relatively inexpensive, and a lot of schools and stuff can get involved with an amateur radio operator. And you have a lot of middle schools and other schools looking at these balloons and launching them and learning about different stuff. So it's a great introduction to amateur radio, and there's a lot of little different aspects of it, niches, and I could go on for an hour explaining all the different components of that. Here's a balloon launch. This is a little bit larger envelope, but still the same sort of thing. You have a balloon. There's a little tracker right there, a 20-meter dipole. So think all this when we're flying a 20-meter dipole and we're still staying within these weight limits. It's very thin. And of course, amateur radio operator. So the payloads, like I said, the trackers, they're generally 2 types. There's all kinds of other ways of doing it, but for the most part, people are either running APRS, which is on VHF, or Whisper, which is on HF. And what we're doing is we piggyback onto these existing systems because it would be impossible to have, ground stations all around the world. So these systems already exist, and we can hop on them. On APRS, one of the limiting factors, besides being VHF line of sight, is that it needs about half a watt to transmit, and the solar panels are really teeny. So save up some energy in some supercapacitors for a couple of minutes, and then you do a very short APRS burst, and your instantaneous power can be that half a watt. On Whisper, on the other hand, most of these are running only 10 milliwatts. And at 10 milliwatts at altitude when it's flying along, it's very common to get 2,000 or 3,000 mile, be received 2,000 or 3,000 miles away.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool. Whisper's a whole nother really neat thing to do. There are other ways of doing it. Some of them are straight beacons, but remember, we're really downloading telemetry. We're not really a beacon. So, and then again, they're solar powered. There's no batteries, so they do go to sleep at night. And that's mainly because the batteries will freeze. And I already kind of mentioned what the supercapacitors are for. And then finally, they're frequency agile. Why is that, or what does that mean? Well, when you're flying APRS, we know of one frequency that APRS is on, right? Well, not necessarily. When you fly over Europe and other parts of the world, the APRS frequency changes. So the balloon needs to know where it is, so it can change frequencies and talk APRS and hopefully get that packet down and then put it on the internet. And also they're geofenced. So there's a couple places in the world, the UK and North Korea, for example, that prohibit airborne transmission of amateur radio. So they're geofenced so they don't transmit over those areas. Again, like being, most of us are really strive to be good amateur radio operators and, abide by all the rules that we can. And that's one of them. So we try to do the best we can. So here's kind of a short, brief change in the technology. Here's a tracker from 2021. This is an APRS only tracker. 2022, this tracker now is a little bit smaller, and it's got HF and APRS. So it's got a 2-meter radio on it. It's got a HF radio. It's got a GPS receiver. It's got a computer, power management systems, obviously the solar panels, and all the 3 antennas for all that stuff. And this one here weighs in at about 14 grams. So it's a little bit heavy, but you know, that's a lot of stuff on that little tracker. And then here's the one from this year. This one we're now down in under 2 grams.
Wow.
So there's an HF transmitter on there, a computer, a GPS receiver, and all the associated power management stuff, and the little computer chip. And there is a complete ready-to-fly tracker, one of the ones that I took out to courtside with me. You can see the little the GPS dipole hanging off the right-hand side, solar panel on the top, and that's kind of the backside of the board. So little teeny thing. So you think if you were to shoot one of those down with a big old missile, it'd be pretty hard to find one of these.
There's no heat signature. What do you aim it at? It's nothing. It's a grain of sand.
Yeah, exactly. So this always brings up the question, what about airplanes, and you know, what kind of rules are we following to try to fly these? So for easily the last decade, there's a few people that have been flying these for almost 2 decades. We've been flying them under this part of the FAA rules, which basically, if you sum it up, it says is that anything that's under 4 pounds, you don't have to report it to the FAA. So you don't have to call a tower, you don't have to issue a NOTAM or anything like that. And there's some other, you know, gotchas in there. You could actually fly a lot more weight with that without notifying them, depending on how your package is put together. But bottom line is, if it's under 4 pounds, there's no requirement to report anything. So that's what everyone's been flying under. And we've been doing our best to, you know, like I said, try to follow all the rules we can. So what is 4 pounds? Well, there's a 4-pound brick right there. I could legally, by the current rules today, fly that 4-pound brick under a balloon with no notifying the FAA. And you can see there's a tracker, one of the current model trackers. So that kind of gives you the ratio of what we're doing. We're, you know, hundreds and hundreds of times smaller than a brick. And the weight of one of our trackers is way less than a hailstone that airplanes, you know, normally encounter at altitudes and stuff like that. And all obviously way smaller than a bird. So what about what happens when you cross over a border? Well, there actually happens to be rules for that when you go over other countries, and it's the International Civil Aviation Organization, which what they do is they write the rules so that airplanes can fly between countries, sort of like you know, telecommunications between countries. We have an organization for that, and that's what they do too. And there's a couple key things in here to be legal to fly over other countries. One, you have to abide by all the rules from the place where you launched it from. Well, you saw in that previous slide, we're staying under 4 pounds, and that's abiding by the rules here. So we meet the first test. The second test is that if it's a light balloon category, and we're using it for gathering meteorological data, which we are, longitude, pressures, temperatures, all that kind of stuff. Everyone's doing that. That you don't have to notify anyone. So those are the rules we've been flying under. And like I said, these balloons have been flying for, you know, upwards of almost 2 decades now. So the really cool thing about them is they're great for getting kids involved. I did a STEM class last summer, and what we did is they were learning about telemetry. So we brought a tracker into the school. The kids got to play with it. We put it outside in the sun, and they decoded live telemetry that was coming in over amateur radio and displayed on their screen in their classroom. And the following day, we then took that tracker and we launched it. It was an APRS tracker, and then they followed it as it went across the country. So it gathered, tons of enthusiasm, especially for young kids and stuff. So that's really cool, and it's great. And we're hoping that that people don't jump on the bandwagon to try to ban these and not really understand what they are. I want to do one other quick thing here. If I can switch my
sure.
computer over here to, let me see. Come on, Skype.
You might be sharing the slides alone. You may have to share another screen or desktop. You can change the share screen by clicking it.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do here. 1 second, bear with me. I'm sorry about that.
No problem. While you do that, I'm going to show the website that you just dropped. This is the amateur.sundhub. And you can see all the little balloons. Look at the little balloons flying around. And that's just in the UK, over Europe. But we've got one flying over Alaska. And
so, Josh, that's what I wanted to do. So, yeah.
I'm happy to do that for you.
Okay. So
let me know where to go.
Well, let's look at.
You drive.
Not yet, Josh.
Oh, I'm not sharing to you guys. Hold on.
Yeah, we don't see it.
No.
Josh, let me go ahead and do it. I think I got it.
Go ahead.
Did I get
No,
it?
it's in a cloud. That's why. It's in a cloud.
Yeah, we're flying in the clouds right now. All right, you got it.
There we go.
There we go.
You got it?
You're sharing. You're driving. Go for it.
Okay, great. So let's see what's going on here. This is live right now. What's flying? So you can see all of these balloons with trails are the ones that we know for sure because that's leaving a 3-day trail behind it. So that's where it's traveled the last 3 days. And if you look, there's some down by New Zealand down here, W5KUB 113. And, all kinds of balloons. You can see over China and just the southern part of Russia there. There's some U.S. call signs there of balloons that are flying. There's one right now over the middle of China, KQ6RS. Tons of stuff going on in Europe. And we have a couple balloons that just left the east coast of the U.S. And then there's one here flying over Alaska right now, which seems to be a hot spot. And I want to tell...
Literally.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
These are Pico balloons that we're looking?
These are all Pico balloons right here. There are a few other balloons mixed in, some actually weather balloons in here.
I was going to ask if there's the bigger high altitude balloons in there as well.
I wonder what the payload color means. Is that the distinction there?
Oh, that's a good question.
Well, the easiest way to pick the Pico balloons out is they've been floating with the trails, because the trails are a 3-day long trail. So that means they're floating at altitude. All the high balloons go up and they burst and come back down again. I do want to mention one thing, that the weather currents, it's very typical to see a balloon come up here over Alaska like this, and then down either the west coast of the U.S. or over, the Wyoming area. And oftentimes there's a weather system here in the high altitudes where there's very little wind. So a balloon will come tearing down the coast and then stop and pause in this area. And then it'll get kicked out and either go over the Great Lakes and then out over Nova Scotia, or it'll get kicked down in the middle of the U.S. and drift across and go out over the East Coast. I don't know if that sounds familiar to any of you.
A little bit.
But those of us that have flown lots of balloons, that path was not unexpected. And then finally, the last balloon that we launched from Quartz Fest, my buddy and I, last year, it did do 10.5 times around the world. And it did fly that course.
We watched it 10 times. Wow.
10 times around the world. So that's it for my presentation today. I could go into details on tons of this stuff.
I think you could do hours on this.
Yes, and then there's lots of...
And we do have questions. We do have questions.
We have a ton of questions. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to love the balloon called No UFO. Is there one on that map called No UFO?
It's the one in Africa, or South America.
I was trying to, I couldn't see it. Okay, that's funny. That's like FBI spy van as your Wi-Fi.
That's the not a cop balloon.
Yeah.
All right.
You have to tell me if you're FBI balloon.
Let's get serious. I'm sorry, Brian. I found that very funny. Actually, it's hilarious.
It is. and you gotta laugh at this stuff. I will let me ask everyone to do one thing. If you hear people talking about balloons and Pico balloons in general, it's really good to educate them on what they are. They're teeny little balloons.
Great.
They are, despite what everyone says that they're not tracked, that's totally not correct. We have elementary and middle school kids all over the world that have been tracking these things for years. We would hope our governments around the world could track them too.
I have so many questions. I have to stop. So you can't burst the Picos, is that correct?
You try not to.
You try not to burst the Picos because you want them to go as far as you can.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And then they come back down softly, or how do they come down?
Don't really know, Gordon.
So you never get them back.
You never hear from them again?
A few people now that it's become more prevalent are looking and they're recovering them, and they are getting a few of these balloons back. Last year there was really, only a couple that had ever been recovered. Now this year, lots more.
Okay.
There's a question, and it's an overarching one. We'll bring it back to here for a second. Let's talk sunk costs, or maybe not sunk costs, but what's the cost of putting? I know the balloon, you can use the Mylar ones, but I know people use more specific balloons for this type of thing, and then you've got the panels and the capacitors potentially, and then the board. Walk us through roughly kind of what the costs are for all of this if you wanted to do this on your own, and then assume that it could just be lost money at that point.
Well, you can do it for as little as under $100 for a launch, and you can easily spend $500, $600. So it depends on where you want to go. And then, like everything else in amateur radio, there's little niche marks on this. So what are you interested in? Some people are interested in writing the software that are in the trackers. Other people are interested in building the hardware for the trackers. There are people that do nothing but chase these. There's folks that use amateur radio and they're trying to test balloons, either using sophisticated like pressure testing on the ground, and using RF to try to test for leaks and things. So there's tons and tons of stuff, all amateur radio related, and a lot of it's really the youth are really interested in.
So that tiny board you showed us, what does that run for price?
That is, I think the current price is like $59.
Oh wow, who makes that?
That's a commercial product.
Yeah,
not bad.
I'll try and pull up the website. What is it?
QRP Labs.
The little.
Oh, they
guy?
have
That
lots
super
of
little one?
stuff. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll pull that up.
So Brian, obviously your feelings are that we want to make sure that this stays vibrant with amateur radio. Do you think this is going to be a thing now, where people are going to be taking out their shotguns and shooting balloons out of the sky? If you don't mind answering, I mean, hopefully that never happens, but I think this is going to pass as another news cycle, and nobody's going to worry about it again.
I think it has, because when I turned on the news this morning, they were reporting on like 12 train crashes around the world.
Yeah. Now it's all
train crashes. There wasn't a single thing on balloons today. So
right after they shot the ones, the small balloons down, you saw Tom Medlin and the QRP Labs guys on every news channel that there was. I saw Tom on News Nation, and he said he had to postpone a BBC appearance because of a conflict. So they've, and now with the 24-hour news cycle, they probably moved on to the next big thing. But at least there was a little bit of limelight and some opportunity for information sharing in the mainstream media, which I thought was a good thing.
I thought so too.
One thing that is done is there's a groups.io, and it's Pico Balloons, and it has really increased the membership there.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's probably doubled the membership. And so far, knock on wood, it's brought quality people in. People that were interested, and they're asking good questions, and they have youth groups that are involved in this. So that's all good stuff.
Yeah, that is.
I agree.
That's great.
Hey, Brian, what's the name of the item on QRP Labs, the little tiny one you showed at the end there, the last
That's
guy?
the U4B.
U4B.
Baker.
And then was there another question? Oh, I mean, this is a general question. How do they keep that stuff from freezing at that altitude?
You don't, and I can really go into what the milestones are for flying. But one of the major milestones when you launch a Pico balloon and you've made it to altitude is that it sleeps throughout the night and then it wakes up in the morning. And it's been in a deep freeze all night. You have no power to it, so all of your startup sequences have to work correctly.
Okay.
Over and over again for a 10 lap flight. Yeah, that's
right.
That's
So
wild.
That was a little over 4 months.
Do you have?
Wow.
Do you have? What's the maximum? What's the maximum flight you know of? How many?
I don't know what the most is. I know someone had a balloon up over a year, but I really
over a year.
My buddy and I that we've been doing this with, we're really trying to focus on education and the fun aspect of it, both for us and for others, as opposed to chasing records. So
I think that's the most important part.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I'm very familiar with my own group here in Colorado. They're Edge of Space Science, and they're high altitude balloons, so they're bigger payloads, the bigger balloons, and they use hydrogen. Which people get shocked. What? Hydrogen? You can't do that. Oh, it's cheaper than helium. So, anyhow, it's a lot. And so they use it.
Fly hydrogen.
We've been using hydrogen also. Not only is it way less expensive, and it's diatomic, so it doesn't leak out of the balloon as fast.
Oh, okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Excellent.
Intuitive because it's lighter, but it doesn't leak as fast.
Oh, and Eric's in the chat. We've got people in the chat who are commenting as well. It's diatomic. That's right. Very cool. Great point.
They know more than I do about it. I just, what I absorb is what I know, and that's what I have absorbed. So, it's pretty cool. And they have like what they call balloon masters. Everybody. So, you have the two controlled people, or maybe one or two, where they're the ones that fill up those big balloons. And we're not talking about the Picos. So I'm not trying to steal from Brian, but I'm just saying. And they're the only ones that are allowed in that area. So like everyone else has to be clear of the area while they fill it and get it ready to go. But Edge of Space Sciences here, they get reimbursed by the colleges here to fly up all of their payloads and stuff like that, and it's pretty neat. Go ahead, Brian.
Remember, you're dealing with a lot more hydrogen there. If you think that little balloon, you had your balloon in your house, and it just has a little fraction of gas on the top of it. It looked like it. I showed you that first picture. It was barely inflated.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question too. I've heard that. So I made a video, and I don't know a lot about the ballooning. But I've been to launches, and I know what it is, and that we shouldn't be scared of it. But so many people ask about the deflated state of the balloon on the ground. But that's on purpose, right, Brian?
Yes, because as it goes up in the atmospheric pressure drops out. It's a sealed balloon, so the differential from the inside and the outside will try to change until the balloon fills out. We had, I can't remember what his name is. He flew a drone at Quartzsite last year when I launched the balloon, and within the first 400 or 500 feet, the balloon had already filled out, probably 50% of its fill. So it doesn't take much in atmospheric pressure to fill it out as it goes up.
Wow.
Well, Brian, thank you. And I know you had a whole bunch of great slides in addition to what we saw. What's the best place one can go to learn more about Pico balloons?
Excellent question.
Yeah, you want to go to groups.io, and then you want to search for the Pico Balloon Group. That's where all the experts hang out, and I do not claim to be an expert. I'm just an enthusiast. I usually start off my things that way, and I really feel that way. So,
well, Brian, thank you so much for being able to join us, especially at this timely time where kids are most important, that we get involved in ham radio. And Jerry and Amy, and your approach is a great one. So thank you.
This was such an intro for youth without even knowing it, right?
I love all of this. This is
I
like
never
the best
Very cool
episode.
This is a great show tonight.
Amazing. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. I'm
I couldn't have packed it more if I had tried.
We were all thinking like, we're barely gonna keep the wheels on
Actually,
this one. This one's
I
coming
have
off the
to-
tracks.
I
But
have
I
to
could.
thank Gordo for everything because he really
Gordo,
reached out to
yeah.
everyone and got this going. So
Gordo saw the vision in all of this. He's like, we gotta.
he
get
did.
this on
He's just like, I can
animation.
tie
This is
this,
gonna
and I
be
can tie
amazing."
this, and then I can do
That was
this.
perfect.
And, so yeah,
Very cool.
we do have to wrap it up though.
We do.
Everybody, thank you so much for being here tonight. I bet the Nets are already going and they're like waiting for you, and we couldn't turn off our TV sets right now to join them on the Nets. So please try to look for them on 7192. Look for Steve W7UDI on 80 and D-Star 14 Charlie. So with that in mind, don't forget to look for that special event. And once again, if you think that you have a great station and that you could help out, please contact Rich. I really want to help this special event out. And other than that, I've got nothing. Contact me next week if you have something interesting for March 15th, which I'm sure we will.
Yep.
Man, this is getting. I agree. This is going to be hard to top, though.
I
Everybody in
think
the chat's gonna be
so.
hard to top. This
We'll
is
do it.
amazing. We'll do
We'll
it.
try.
We'll do it. I like the confidence. Dawn, I love the confidence. That's right.
See?
Well, everybody, thank you so much for watching and listening.
Sending me new crayons? Really? Thank you.
Send in new crayons. There you go.
I need-
Thank you so much, everybody. We really do appreciate you and all the time, that you take out of your day to watch
Yes,
us here.
thank you.
And boy, yeah, I mean, get out there and do some radio stuff. There's so many amazing
Young Ham
things
of the
people
Year
are doing.
award.
That's right.
Young Ham of the Year. I'll make
That's
sure to
right.
get that link updated. So, Dawn, I need that link, but I think I could probably find it. But anyway, yeah, go enjoy some radio. Consider doing something like a Pico balloon launch and inviting a bunch of kids. Maybe do the launch and the build process with a local school if you're a parent. Probably not that difficult to push a STEM topic like this
Yep.
in your school without much
Yep.
of an issue. So consider doing that as a project coming into spring. What a
Yep.
good time to get out of the winter and into the spring. Go ahead, Don.
Good place to find this, arnewsline.org. Along the top, you'll see the little tab that says awards. Hover over that, and you'll see 2023 Young Ham of the Year, and that's where you find this nominating form.
I got
Perfect.
it.
Very easy.
All right,
Very
I'll
easy.
drop it in the chat. Okay, everybody, we're wrapping up 73 to y'all. Have a great rest of your weekend.
7-3.
I'll
Good
talk
night,
to you
all.
on
Thanks for
Saturday
being
in
here.
the live stream. Until then, we'll play you out. See ya. Woo! Boy, that's a lot of projects for me to consider moving into spring here. We have a camp out coming up in April for my birthday, and I'm thinking about doing a Pico balloon launch. So I will.
Oh,
go.
what about? Wait. What about the ham badge game?
That's also potentially on the list. But
Let's put a ham badge on a balloon, by God. That's what
there we
do.
go.